If you were to list all of the reasons why driving games were fun, you'd probably say things like the speed, the adrenaline, and the sleek modern cars. Well, Snowrunner has none of that. Instead, you drive trucks, some of them from as early as the 70s, often quite slowly through harsh conditions. If you're like me and a newcomer to the series or this genre, this may not sound very riveting, but in this review, I will show you that Snowrunner is a masterclass of game design with a clever and addicting gameplay loop that will leave you bleary and disoriented at 3 AM wondering where the time went. Welcome to my review of Snowrunner. From a visual standpoint, I think this game looks fantastic and runs very stable. I play on the PC with the GTX 970, which is getting kinda old, but while playing on high, I only had frame drops when the game was auto-saving. Style-wise, the game aims for realism, while choosing to amp up the colors and visual splendor during weather and day-to-night transitions. The first time you see a sunset streaming through the trees in Michigan, a sunrise blindingly reflecting off the icy roads in Alaska, or the northern lights in the peninsula of Kola, it is downright show-stopping. Not everything is perfect. The particle effects of the mud and the water, while functional in the way that the physics engine wraps them around the wheels of the vehicles, the fidelity of these effects are not as stunning in the same way many of the other aspects of the game are. The world, while beautiful, is quite barren. Outside of the players, there is no one else on the road, and it's borderline eerie going through the empty settlements and towns. You can switch to the cabin driving view of any truck and find a beautifully rendered recreation complete with details like working gauges and physics-appropriate movement. There is a pretty reasonable amount of visual customization for the trucks between different paint jobs and accessories, as well as more performance-oriented changes such as tires or lifting of the chassis. Differentials and all-wheel drive all work in ways that you would expect their real-world counterparts, and if you were someone who came to this game with a knowledge of off-roading, you would find ways to transfer that knowledge and practice to this game. All total, there are 40 licensed vehicles in the game, with more being added in the future via DLC. You can also add more with mods if that's your thing. One of the underrated aspects of any driving game is the sound design, and Snowrunner is sadly not consistent in this department. Some trucks, like the Longhorn 4520, sound gravelly and awesome like a big diesel engine should. While others, like the Taiga, kind of whoosh and whir along in a less than satisfying manner. The vehicle's horns are even more mixed, with several of them sounding like they came out of varied stock sound libraries and recorded in environments that sound nothing alike to each other. However, I do consider it pretty fun to knock over fences with them or blow up an outhouse. Can I destroy this small outhouse with a honk? Oh, I can! Oh god, it flew everywhere. Oh, the camera's freaking out. That was exactly what I expected to happen. The soundtrack, though, is quite enjoyable. There's something special about hearing country rock slide guitar riffs after an accomplishment. And while the soundtrack does vary from map to map in genre and instrumentation, I did find myself turning off the game's soundtrack and playing my own music after a few hours. I don't think it would be fair to consider this a criticism of the soundtrack, which on the whole I enjoyed. It's just very difficult to have a soundtrack that can keep my attention for long enough in a game like this, when I'd rather drive down the road listening to my personal favorite tunes in real life, and so also in a driving video game. The controls are a bit of a mixed bag. On one hand, I love the way that the different tires, speeds, trucks, terrain, and cargo interact, and I cannot stress enough how well all those mechanics work together, making the off-roading in this game challenging and addicting. However, the steering and the camera do not function perfectly. I play this game with a gamepad, and I've also tried playing this game with a keyboard, the latter of which I cannot recommend. The camera does not clip through physical objects in the game, which is a bit of a blessing because your view is never stuck inside a rock, but it does mean that it feels like you have no control over your camera sometimes, and it's jarring, and it can make it very difficult to see what's happening to your truck. You can get stuck and not even see why you got stuck here and there. Oh god. The camera gets so messed up by these towers, holy crap. Oh no. The steering in this game was awful at first. I felt like I had no fine control when I started playing, and it took some experimentation on settings to make it feel playable. My working setup is to play the game with a gamepad on steering wheel controls with a sensitivity of just under 0.70. And this works for me, and it's how I played most of the entire game, but I think a lot of players will be understandably put off before finding what control scheme works for them, and that's a bit of a shame. Once you've sorted out your controls though, the driving is a lot of fun. Driving through the mud, through a lake, or doing rock climbing all have their own separate challenges and strategies that feel challenging but fair. Mastering your trucks and terrain is a fun learning curve. The very first truck you get into is a little Chevy pickup truck, and the first thing that will happen is that you get stuck in the mud. You get out by turning on all-wheel drive. It's really simple, but conquering this little obstacle is immensely satisfying, and the game is full of these little driving puzzles. Sometimes you need to find the appropriate winching point to pull yourself along, and others you just need to steer your wheel to a different part of the road with more traction. Applying the tools you bring to the challenges the game puts forth to you is fun and satisfying as its own little gameplay loop within the broader loop of completing objectives. The objectives themselves mainly consist of fetch quests, and in my opinion the game does a pretty good job of dressing up the fetch quests differently. Some of them are basic bring X item to X place, get experience and money. Others are like maybe you need to bring gas and repair supplies to a truck in the middle of nowhere and then tow that truck back to the garage, and then your reward is that truck for some reason. Some of them are just go to the peak of this mountain because the view is sick. This may not sound that dynamic, I guess, but the variability comes in the form of the environment, player choice and strategy, and just a little bit of resource management. A lot of your choice is based on mitigating risk versus time spent. Depending on the size and the weight of your cargo, you can take a longer route with easier roads or, actually paved roads, or you can take a shortcut through the bush and see what happens. If you get stuck or flip or whatever, you'll have to either recover your truck or teleport it back to base, or bring another truck to rescue your truck and your cargo. Your only real penalty to messing up is your own time, as it can take up to an hour to do certain longer contracts, even if nothing goes wrong. Despite that, you still need to decide which is the best truck for the job, what tires to put on that truck, and if you need a trailer, or can this job be done in one trip. How you play this game is completely up to you. The player's motivation for doing tasks and contracts is basically completionism and the light RPG mechanics that the game has. There are ranks, and certain cosmetic and tire choices are unlocked via rank. It also costs money to buy trucks and modify them. As far as replayability goes, game content is not unlimited, though there is quite a bit to do before running out. There are repeatable time challenges which add a bit of a speedrunning-esque flair to the game. There are some new trucks and maps being released as DLC, and at the time of this writing, the area of Lake COVID, I don't know how to say that in Russian, has just come out, adding new ways to explore and new trucks to play with in an entirely new area with different challenges and tasks to do. There is also a dedicated modding community for this game, but I have not had a chance to check out how extensive that has gotten. If you're looking for more of a motivation to play than just the progression systems, the game doesn't offer much. The Michigan map has some bare written exposition right at the beginning of the game about fixing their infrastructure after a big flood, and tasks have a little written blurb, like this mission here in Alaska. Mark Pearson, the owner of a local factory, has gone and lost his car. Again. His Hummer fell down from a bridge due to driver error. See if you can find the car and take it to a nearby parking lot. Alright, ooh, free Hummer if I get ooh, I do like free Hummers, very nice. All that being said, the game could benefit from having some semblance of a narrative to push players forward. That's not to say the game is completely devoid of personality. Seeing my little driver avatar napping in the cab of the truck while my friends load up my trailer is always kind of adorable. I just kinda wish it wasn't the only example of humanity in an otherwise empty world devoid of human life. This is very typical for the genre. Successful simulation driving games often only need vehicles and roads to be considered successful. The fact that there's even a small narrative motivation is generous for this genre. One of the major purchasing points for me when I bought this game was the advertised 4-player co-op, and in theory, you can kind of play this entire game in co-op. Unfortunately, in practice, it's a little more dubious of a claim because the game's physics and netcode are totally broken. In multiplayer, it is not uncommon for trucks to become sprawled out spaghetti messes of stretched axles, flying through the air at high speed before coming to rest by impaling themselves through a tree. I have had other problems with floating cargo and poltergeist trailers that look as though they exist in one space while physically existing in another, but invisibly. The physics bugs in the multiplayer of this game are many, and often hilarious until they ruin all of your slow-going progress, as trucks go cartwheeling through the air with seemingly no warning. There is also a weird issue where I'm unable to play online while another person in my house is playing on the same network, and I've had to download a VPN just to circumvent this. Should you brave all the technical problems found in co-op, you'll find that it is the same game, but now you can progress someone else's map or they can progress yours. If you join your friend's game, you can help him complete his tasks and he keeps that progress on his save file, and you do keep the experience and money you receive by doing this, but you do not progress your own save. In the end, it's simply a faster way to do the same content that you would have been doing by yourself, but there is something fun about hanging out and driving trucks with your friends, so I can't knock it that much. As I finish up writing this review, it feels as though I've said more negative than I have positive about Snowrunner, but I'd have you know that I happily recommend this game, which at its base price of 55 Canadian dollars has been more than worth my money and my time. The gameplay loop of off-road real-time puzzle solving continues to not get old, and as more new content is added with the DLC and the Season's Pass, and fingers crossed a more stable multiplayer co-op, I don't think Snowrunner has even hit its top speed yet. Final thoughts. This is a great game that I expect to be playing well into the future as more content drops, and I will even happily brave the cooperative fun in the multiplayer despite its occasional cosplay of Goat Simulator. If your interest is at all piqued and you have the chance to pick up the game, I wholly recommend that you do. Thanks so much for watching. Please leave a like, subscribe, and comment, and check out my Twitch and other socials in the description below, and have a fantastic day.